Okay, this is the second video I've made tonight, so we're hopping. Um, One of the things that's been going on is in November we had an election, and so the Republicans now control Congress. And so everybody's like, oh, well, it's time for them to put up or shut up. In a lot of ways, yes. As in the first video that I just did, we talked about this budget, and if you're a true Republican, there's no way you voted for a $1 trillion budget. But anyway, the, the thing that I wanted to talk about here is sort of our system of government. As we discussed in the previous video, we are a republic. We are not a democracy. I know that's kind of hard for some of you to believe, but if we were a democracy, when something came up, essentially everybody in this country that was able to vote, meaning legal age, like 18 and above, you could go to the polls and you could vote on it, and then based on that decision, whoever was in power would take that action. As a republic, we elect individuals to represent us in our nation's capital, and those few people, 535 people, not counting the president, so 536, carry out the business of the government. So we have three branches of government. And no, they are not the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the President. They are the judicial, which is the Supreme Court, the executive, which is the President, and the legislature, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. This is based on the U.S. Constitution, which has provided the checks and balances. The legislature makes the laws, the president enforces the laws, and the judicial decides what those laws mean if there is some kind of ambiguity as to what they might mean. So let's take a big case, the Affordable Care Act, which is also known as Obamacare. The law was introduced in the Senate. It was signed by the president, and the Supreme Court ruled last year that the so-called penalties in the law are actually taxes. So, what does this all really mean? Well, first off, in order for any new taxes to be levied, they have to be introduced in the House of Representatives. And you're like, wait a minute, you just said it was introduced in the Senate. Yes, it was. This is one of the issues, which we'll get to here in a second. Okay, the president is then required to enforce the law once one of two things happen. The president can either veto a bill, saying, no, I don't want this, go away. He can let the bill stand and not sign it, which means within 10 days of it being delivered to the president, it becomes law. Or he can outright sign the bill and it becomes law. So, in this case, President Obama, in great fanfare, signed the law. So Obamacare became the law of the land. Okay, well, however, this president thinks that he can do as he wants. And so he's changed this law a whole bunch of times. You know, it might be 5 or 6, it might be hundreds of times. But we have a 2,200 page document, which is Obamacare. And inside those 2,200 pages are 1,800 different references where the Director of Health and Human Services can decide what the Congress meant by that little section. So this 2,200-page document has manifested into 900 pages of taxes and some 56,000 pages of regulations. And that's just what we know of. There's another 30,000 pages that are still working through the process that will be additional regulations. So all kinds of lawsuits were filed. So it goes to the Supreme Court, where Chief Justice John Roberts sided with 4 other justices, and they ruled that the penalties in Obamacare were not penalties, but taxes. So here's the thing. If under the United States Constitution, a tax must originate within the House of Representatives, how can the Supreme Court say that a bill that originated in the Senate is a tax? Technically, they can't. They sort of really screwed the pooch here. Unfortunately, when the Supreme Court decides something, that becomes the supreme law of the land. That's sort of their gift to us. Now, granted, the Supreme Court has done a tremendous job over the last couple of centuries deciding cases. But for whatever reason, John Roberts and the majority screwed this one royally. And because a federal judge is appointed for life, they don't have to answer to anybody about anything. And unless there's some gross misconduct, these guys are on that bench until either they die or they decide to leave. So, several Supreme Court justices over the years have given interviews. They've given speeches. They've written books and stuff. But there's nothing that says that John Roberts needs to come forward and say, hey, this is why I said this was a tax and why there isn't a contradiction. He doesn't have to explain that. Okay, but on the other hand, we have other court cases that are coming up where they could really sort of define this law more. We had the Hobby Lobby case last year, or was that argued this year? I think it was argued this year, and they're going to decide it here in 2015, about the religious aspect. Maybe that was decided last year. No, I think it was decided last year, and they ruled that that the I don't want to say the religious preferences of the company can be dictated down through the employees, i.e., I'm a Catholic, so you have to follow my Catholic teachings. But for certain organizations that are run on a philosophy from religion, certain aspects can flow down through the average employee. In this case, the family that owns Hobby Lobby, they also own Mardale bookstore, and that's a religious bookstore. And so they're trying to say that while they aren't forcing their employees to follow their religious teachings, they don't think it's right that the government tell them that they have to go against their religious teachings for something that might benefit their employees. In this case, there were 20 different birth control methods outlined in Obamacare, and they challenged 4 of them. So in other words, they're saying, okay, hey, look, we will allow our company to pay for 16 birth control methods um, for our employees, but not these last 4. And the Supreme Court ruled in their favor. And so everybody tried to say, oh, well, they're trying to, dictate, women's health and all of that. No, they aren't. What they were doing is just stating, hey, you know what? I don't think it's right that I have to pay for insurance where some employee can go out and get an abortion for free. Abortion's one of those topics that brings out the best and the worst in us. We all understand, hey, sometimes the mother's life is in danger, and for some people, you know what? The baby takes precedence, and in others, the mothers take precedence. But anyway, getting back to what we go on here. Our government is very difficult for people to understand if they haven't grown up in the system. And quite frankly, if you watch Jay Leno's Jaywalkers, Glenn Beck's got one on Friday that he does during the football season, or some of these other people, you have to wonder, man, these kids that say they're in college, how the hell did you get in college? You're dumber than dog shit. You have to want to know what's going on, or you won't know what's going on. Okay? Nobody's going to come up to you and say, hey, let me tell you the news. Hey, let me tell you the current events. You have to get off your duff and say, okay, let me turn on ABC News or Fox News, or let me go search on the internet to find out what's going on. A lot of kids like Jon Stewart, but you know what? Jon Stewart's a comedian. While some of the stuff he says is all right, most of the time that dude is so far left. You know what? He don't even know a right turn would be coming if it smacked him in the face. You have to do your own research. I can tell you, hey, look, our government's a republic. But you know what? If you aren't willing to go out there and verify what I'm telling you, then what I'm telling you could be, men are from Mars and women are from Venus type shit. All I can do is say, really find out who's talking to you, find out where they're getting their information from, make sure that you can verify it. I heard this weird thing on Fox Business tonight. They say that women that have bigger bra sizes spend more money online. I'd like to know where they get that at. But hey, it sounds like a great statistic. When I told my wife, she laughed. So, look stuff up, people. Don't just take my word for it.